5 a.m. The people of the Pacific slept beneath a velvet sky, not knowing they were moments away from an event that would stun the world. There were no storms on the radar. The ocean was quiet. And yet, far above those calm waves, a swarm of Chinese hypersonic missiles sliced through the clouds, invisible to even the most advanced defenses. Their target was America's pride, the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group stationed in international waters, but at that exact hour, the very center of a living storm. Before we unfold this extraordinary story, if you want frontline truth and tactical detail that others overlook, subscribe right now. What's about to happen will change how you see modern warfare. It started with a single, chilling signal, a ping intercepted by US satellites, signaling missile canisters activating deep within a Chinese coastal base. Within seconds, 12 hypersonic missiles erupted from underground silos, accelerating past Mach 7 almost instantly, each zigzagging on unpredictable courses. Their warheads weren't merely designed to destroy steel, but to pierce the American sense of invulnerability. This was no warning shot. This was a calculated statement. The Pacific was no longer safe. Not for the world's strongest navy, not for anyone. High over the waves, advanced EW, electronic warfare drones, China's newest secret weapon, rushed out ahead of the missiles, jamming US radars and scrambling targeting data. On the USS Ford's deck, alarms screamed. Sailors sprinted to stations, faces colored by the pale glow of red alert lights. Officers scanned screens jammed with static. For a fleeting moment, centuries of naval might, engineering, and tradition all seemed to hang by a thread. Suddenly, missile defense crews sprang into action. The Ford's powerful SPY-6 radar, designed to cut through the chaos of electronic attacks, picked up ghostly tracks, then locked on to the first wave. In rapid-fire succession, advanced SM-6 interceptors launched skyward, their contrails twisting across the dawn. Against all odds, the first of China's hypersonic warheads was vaporized mid-flight, the explosion lighting up the sky like a second sunrise. But 11 more streaked toward the task force, each faster, smarter, deadlier. Below decks, in the Combat Information Center, specialists fought a different battle. Digital war. Enemy drones flitted over the water, spoofing GPS, mimicking friendly signals, seeking to lure US missiles off course. But the Ford's AI-driven jamming suite, freshly upgraded, hurled countermeasures by the millisecond. The airwaves became a battlefield, every frequency a minefield. Out on the ocean's horizon, surrounding Allied ships, destroyers, frigates, even a distant Japanese cruiser, coordinated a ballet of missile defenses, shooting down incoming warheads in a display of precision never before witnessed in wartime. Still, 2 hypersonic missiles found their mark. The first struck a cruiser's bow, tearing a fiery gash in its steel armor, sending shockwaves through the formation. The second barreled toward the USS Ford herself. For an instant, time slowed to a single excruciating heartbeat. But just before impact, an American CIWS close-in weapon system fired a ceaseless arc of depleted uranium rounds, shredding the missile a split second before it hit the hull. Spiraling debris slammed the flight deck, dented, scorched, but not breached. The Ford was bloodied but afloat. Sirens wailed as fire crews battled flames, but the ship's heartbeat held steady amidst the chaos. As smoke drifted off the water, new orders flashed across the comms. Hours of drills became seconds of instinct. From hundreds of miles away, B-1B bombers took flight, tearing through the clouds on afterburner. Submerged somewhere beneath the waves, an American attack submarine received its launch codes, ready to deliver an answer that would echo through history. Back in the Pacific, the battered but unbowed carrier strike group regrouped. Damaged ships pulled alongside repair tenders, wounded sailors were treated, and a silence settled. A silence electric with what had just been survived. All of this unfolded in a time span shorter than a morning commute. But its consequences ricocheted far beyond. At Beijing's war rooms, generals stared at silent monitors, calculating the cost of failed intimidation. In Washington, the National Security Council convened in emergency session, analysts parsing every byte of sensor data, every missile's trajectory. Around the world, stocks tumbled, and pundits debated, was this the start of a wider war, or the exclamation point at the end of a long, tense paragraph? For ordinary families in Shanghai and Los Angeles, for sailors, traders, and diplomats, the myth of a predictable Pacific was gone. What remained was the knowledge that a single dawn, a single hypersonic volley, could now change the fate of continents. Back on the Ford, sailors gathered on deck, watching the pale orange sun cut through haze, illuminating scars on gleaming hulls. Proof that war, once the realm of distant artillery and gradual escalation, now arrived in the blink of an eye. The first light of dawn barely pierced through thick, acrid smoke that rose from what once was the mighty Russian base known as Zarya 17. Minutes ago, it had been a fortress, humming with the relentless rhythm of war preparations. Armored vehicles lined in formation, radar dishes sweeping the skies, communications buzzing with urgent chatter. Now, it was a charred wasteland of destruction. Inside the shattered command bunker, the air was heavy with dust and disbelief. Concrete walls that had promised protection and power crumbled around twisted remnants of computers and communications equipment. Men and women who had been confident mere moments before were now scrambling through the rubble, some bearing injuries, others dazed beyond comprehension. The air raid sirens screamed too late to offer warning, piercing through the dawn with a desperate urgency that only amplified the chaos. Soldiers shouted, gathering what little order they could as fires raged uncontrollably, igniting fuel dumps and stacks of ammunition that exploded with thunderous roars. Flares shot into the sky, attempting to mark landing zones for emergency responders, but thick smoke and ongoing fires made rescue operations perilous. Satellite imagery, released hours later by NATO intelligence, would reveal the full extent of the carnage. Massive craters where once stood command centers and fuel depots. Blackened wreckage of vehicles turned to molten steel, jagged wrecks of missile launchers and radar towers jutting out like the broken bones of a colossal beast brought low. The deafening bursts of secondary explosions had scattered debris for miles, shaking nearby forests and towns. The estimated toll was staggering. Western analysts placed the number of Russian soldiers killed or seriously wounded in the initial strike at over 200, with dozens more missing or trapped beneath collapsed structures. Communication arrays, which served as the nerve lines from the base to frontline units, lay in ruin. Radio silence descended over sectors that for months had relied on Zarya 17 as a command hub. Units operating on the southern front found themselves isolated, cut off from resupply and critical updates. Even more devastating was the collapse of the base's air defenses, deemed some of the most formidable in the region. The S-400 missile batteries, infamous for their ability to track and destroy aircraft and incoming missiles at extraordinary range, had been left blind. The sophisticated radar systems they relied on were blanketed in electronic noise, courtesy of the Jammer 9 drones deployed moments before the strike. These UAVs flooded the radio spectrum with jamming signals so powerful they rendered entire radar networks mute. Screens flickered to static as operators struggled futilely to regain control. Attempts to launch a counterattack failed spectacularly. Russian interceptors scrambled too late, flying blind into a digital fog that veiled the attackers' positions. Surface-to-air missile operators fired volley after volley, but their targets were gone before they could even see them. The psychological blow cut as deep as the physical. Officers and troops found their sense of security shattered. This was no simple attack at the front lines. It was a deep strike into what had been thought a secure rear position. The myth of invulnerability, carefully cultivated through propaganda and fortified defenses, was now fractured. Leaked conversations and intercepted communications told a story of confusion and fear. How did they breach our defenses? Where was the warning? Are the other bases next? The uncertainty reverberated beyond the base, shaking confidence across all ranks. In the civilian towns near Sochi and along the Black Sea coast, peaceful life was shattered by tremors, and the eerie orange glow of fires lit hours before sunrise. Residents, who had watched this war from the sidelines, suddenly found its brutal realities at their doorstep. Power grids sputtered and failed, causing blackouts that extended beyond military zones. Emergency services rushed to contain fires threatening populated areas, while displaced families sought shelter from the smoke and destruction. Reactions from the international community were swift and decisive. NATO's intelligence agencies pored over reconnaissance images, marveling at the surgical precision of the strikes. Analysts noted the unprecedented integration of electronic warfare drones with stealth fighters and missile barrages, a new template for modern warfare. Headlines worldwide carried phrases like "Precision overwhelms fortress," "Stealth shatters Russian stronghold," and "New era of warfare dawns." On the diplomatic front, emergency meetings convened in Brussels, Washington, and London as leaders assessed the implications. The operation was carefully framed as a targeted military necessity, designed to prevent further aggression by dismantling a critical hub. But the message was clear. The West possessed both the means and the will to reach deep into Russian territory. The sizable logistical blow to Moscow's southern command would not easily be repaired. Moscow's response was characteristically guarded and opaque. State media avoided mention of the strike, dismissing reports as technical malfunctions or unknown sabotage. Behind the curtain, however, whispers of investigation and finger-pointing filled high command corridors. Reports surfaced of abrupt dismissals of base commanders, and military officials tasked with hardening defenses faced intense scrutiny. The after-effects on the battlefield were immediate. Supply convoys that had relied on Zarya 17 for fuel and ammunition were diverted hundreds of kilometers eastward, causing delays and operational bottlenecks. Frontline units experienced shortages and were forced to ration critical resources. Commanders reported increased vulnerability in contested sectors as the normally reliable supply chains frayed under the pressure. For Ukraine and its allies, the strike was a beacon of leverage and hope. It validated asymmetric strategies built on precision targeting, electronic warfare, and the integration of unmanned systems. Military commentators hailed the operation as a masterclass in 21st century joint warfare, combining human expertise, cyber techniques, and cutting-edge technology into a single coordinated blow. Back on the ground, the survivors' task was daunting. They sifted through debris, salvaging what they could while accounting for the fallen. Stories of heroism amid despair emerged. A medic risking life to fetch trapped comrades, a communications officer restoring limited links against all odds, a commander rallying scattered troops to maintain order. But beneath these acts, a sobering realization took root. No base was beyond reach, no defense impenetrable. As the day gave way to night, governments and militaries around the world contemplated the shift that had just occurred. The battlefield was no longer a static line fortified with walls and radar arrays. It was an invisible, shifting domain defined by stealth, speed, and electronic dominance. The war had morphed, just as much psychological as physical. Moscow's fortress was breached not merely by bombs, but by the shattering of its confidence, the piercing of its aura of invulnerability. What began as a strike on a remote base was now a symbol of a changing era, where adaptability, surprise, and technological synergy redefine power. The consequences were far from over. As the smoke from the shattered remnants of Zarya 17 rose through the morning haze, a stark new reality had settled over the global landscape of warfare and diplomacy. The 5 a.m. strike was more than a tactical victory. It was a declaration that the modern battlefield had evolved into an arena ruled by invisibility, precision, and electronic supremacy. Stealth fighter jets, equipped with cutting-edge sensors and electronic warfare suites, were no longer just tools of destruction. They were game changers in rewriting the rules of engagement. Where once military might was measured in numbers and brute force, now it was shaped by how effectively one could operate unseen, disrupt enemy defenses, and deliver surgical blows with minimal risk. The fusion of stealth technology with electronic warfare capabilities, jamming radars, blinding sensors, and deceiving communications allowed these fighters to operate with unprecedented freedom inside fortified enemy airspace. This strike underscored that no fortress is impregnable. The myth of rear-area invulnerability had been shattered, forcing global militaries to rethink defense doctrines fundamentally. Modern conflicts would demand a blend of cyber-physical operations, rapid adaptability, and superior intelligence to prevail. Diplomatic corridors buzzed with tension. Emergency meetings convened among allied nations as they assessed the broader implications of the strike. Moscow faced a moment of reckoning, not only with a loss of critical military infrastructure, but with an exposed vulnerability that threatened its strategic posture. Allies of Russia expressed concern, while Western powers saw the operation as a reaffirmation of their technological edge and resolve. Yet with this shift came the ever-present danger of escalation. Experts warned that Moscow might counter with asymmetric responses, deploying new anti-stealth technologies, increasing electronic warfare countermeasures, or opening new fronts to divert attention. The fragile balance maintained by deterrence was now fractured, and the risk of miscalculation loomed larger than ever. For the soldiers and commanders on the ground, the lessons were immediate and enduring. No base, no supply line, no command post could be taken for granted. Continuous vigilance, investment in electronic protection measures, and innovative tactics would be imperative to survive in this new era. In Kyiv and Washington, confidence and determination were buoyed by this success. The strike was proof positive that technological ingenuity and strategic coordination could offset numerical disadvantages. It was a beacon of resilience and hope for all who believed in advancing defense capabilities to safeguard sovereignty and global stability. But the story is far from over. The battlefield of tomorrow belongs to those who can move unseen, strike unexpectedly, and master the electromagnetic spectrum as thoroughly as they command weapons. The days when air superiority meant solely having the most fighters or missiles are gone. Today, dominance means controlling the invisible battles waged across radar waves, communications, and cyber networks. For you watching this unfolding history, the question remains: who will seize the advantage in this game of shadows? Will it be those who invest in stealth and electronic warfare innovation, or those who cling to outdated doctrines and hope for past glories? One thing is certain: wars will no longer be won by sheer firepower alone. They will be won by the mastery of technology, intelligence, and the courage to strike first and disappear before the world can respond. If this story gave you a new perspective on modern conflict and the evolving face of warfare, make sure to like this video, subscribe for real-time updates, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think will happen next in this high-stakes global game of cat and mouse? Stay alert, stay informed, because in the fog of war, control over the unseen battlefield will define the future of nations. Thank you for watching.